Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and also, tell all your friends, get them in on the action. Or if you'd like, you can find us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and man, the Penguins, they won a crazy game, 6-5 in overtime against the Buffalo Sabres. We'll break down the good, the bad, and the ugly from last night, and also as it pertains to the first full calendar week of the season, as we're 5 games in, only 8 days past the opener. A crazy start to the season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then, since we're through 5 games, we're going to play a little word association to discuss a handful of Penguins that I don't feel we talk about a lot on this show. Guys that don't make the major headlines, and yet there needs to be discussions about them. So we'll do that to round out the show. But let's get started and talk about what everybody wants to talk about, the Penguins and their major milestones. It was a special night in Pittsburgh for the veteran stars, Sidney Crosby and Evgeni Malkin. I mean, you know it's special whenever both of them get interviewed at the same time by TNT following the game, which was essentially just Paul Bissonnette and Henrik Lundqvist praising at their feet. You didn't really have any questions. Just, what's it like to be amazing? And both of them, of course, being them, were just like, yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. So, Horwat, what did you think of last night's game, last night's performance from these two, and did you catch the post-game interview on TNT?
Who didn't catch the post-game interview on TNT? And again, it wasn't much, but it was one of those rare times where this is a video you just need to see. You need to watch it regardless of what kind of questions are being asked and answered, however good or bad the answers are, however it could have been a throwaway, pretty much what it felt like almost. A little throwaway. Here's a couple of seconds of Malkin and Crosby doing an interview together because, A, that's rare. Let's be honest. Yeah. They do scrums all the time. They do interviews all the time, but never together like that. So it was just seeing that rarity was good. And it's, of course, the game was also memorable in so many ways, even if you take away the milestones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Josh Yohe that put it, they're at least never boring. And yeah, they haven't been since, boy, oh boy, for a long time. So yeah, a night to remember for everyone as Penguin fans. And yeah, the interview was more of a love fest, but hey, it's what those two deserve. They shouldn't be getting pestered with the tough questions, especially after that kind of
win. Yeah,
exactly. Especially after that kind of contest. And it looks like Evgeni Malkin is certainly here to stay, and Sidney Crosby is finding a rhythm, and it's all starting to come up Millhouse in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, now Sidney Crosby, I would say last night is probably the best that he has looked. There were some people, and they were in on the live yesterday at Tip of the Ice-Burgh saying, does it feel like something's off with Sidney Crosby? And I said, it's not like something's off. It's just he hasn't quite hit that level. He's been good, but he hasn't quite hit that level. He hit that level last night, and in doing so, notches his 1,600th career point on a power play assist to Brian Rust in the first period. That was his first of 3 points on the night, but that was obviously the one that was the first memorable one. Obviously scores his first goal of the season in the overtime winner, but he becomes the 5th fastest player to reach the 1,600 point mark behind only, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Marcel Dion, Jaromir Jagr. I would say a pretty good class of people to be included in for Sidney Crosby. So a tremendous milestone. He really only has one left that he could hit this season, and it's not a huge milestone as much as it is continuing to climb the all-time points ladder. He's 39 points behind Joe Sakic for 9th all-time on the NHL points list. That's probably the only person he's going to pass this year, but you know who that puts him right up against? Sir 66, Mario Lemieux. So certainly a nice night to cap off, a crazy first week of the season for Sidney Crosby. And now that the milestones are pretty much behind him, I think it's just time for him to buckle down and for the Penguins to get wins. I think that's what he's been focused on this whole time. But everybody on the outside looking in is going to focus more on wins now than anything milestone-wise for Crosby and for Malkin, who we'll get to in just a minute.
Yeah, the big stories are gone. It's now about the games. It's now focusing on who the next opponent is. It's now focusing on who's playing on what line. It's time to start looking into the minute details of this team and not just, hey, let's get Crosby, Malkin the puck. Let's get that. People didn't even get it. Let's get that moment. The the shared point, the puck cut in half. I mean, we didn't get it, but so be it. The Penguins did go out. They each got their achievements. They got a big, entertaining win in an early season game that could mean something down the line. Because what did early season games that were blown lead to down the line last season? That was a missed playoff appearance. So getting the single point and then getting that second one in overtime, they're trending in the proper direction already. And it is early and there's still a ton of room to get better or get worse. But so far, it looks like some of the big problems that nagged the Penguins and finding wins last year are starting to mitigate a bit. I mean, they scored a game-winning goal in overtime, and the power play looks to be rolling a bit.
I mean, 2 for 5 last night. I believe they scored 3 or 4 or 5, at least 4 power play goals in the first 5 games of the season. So you can't be upset with that unit. You can be upset with another unit, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, we do have to give praise to Evgeni Malkin. I mean, Crosby has been good, but Malkin has been excellent, right? He stays hot last night, scores that 500th career NHL goal. He becomes the 48th player in NHL history to hit that mark. Only 3 players that have hit 500 goals are not in the Hall of Fame, and that is discounting active players like Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, who's already hit it. But the 3 players that haven't, Peter Bondra, Pat Verbeek, and Patrick Marleau. So a lot of Pats and Petes that aren't getting the praise when they get the 500 career goals. But what I want to ask you, and the Penguins put out this graphic last night, you might have already seen it, so this might be a moot question. Can you name the 5 players that have the most assists on Evgeni Malkin goals?
I did look at it, and I'm going to see if I memorized the top 5, because it was
Most
Crosby.
of the time when we look at that, we look at the bottom, because that's way more fun anyway.
Oh, that's where the meat is. That's where the fun is. Matt Coronado is on that list. Think of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's who I saw. Anyway, Sidney Crosby's obviously number 1. I would assume Kris Letang is 2. I think
Correct.
I'm pretty sure I saw Phil Kessel is up there.
That's the top 3 right there.
That's 3. Okay. Oh, I forget if James Neal was the 5.
Yep.
Okay.
James Neal was the 5, so you're missing number 4. I mean, you got these pretty quickly. So number 4, don't overthink it. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I'm not going to overthink it too hard.
Really? Because it seems like you are.
I am, because now it's all coming up blanks. I know Chris Kunitz was behind James Neal.
Yes.
I remember that one. Eesh.
Brian Rust is also right behind James Neal as well.
Dang, okay.
Yeah. James Neal, I believe, had 38. Brian Rust has 32 to this point.
Screw it. Give me the last name, because I don't want to hold up this podcast.
Alrighty. Well, Sergei Gonchar is number 4. His protege, I mean, not his protege, his mentor when he came to Pittsburgh. Gonchar was obviously a huge part of those early Penguins teams, those early Crosby Malkin Penguins teams, especially on the power play, where Evgeni Malkin made a lot of his hay in those MVP Art Ross seasons. So Sidney Crosby, Kris Letang, Phil Kessel, Sergei Gonchar, James Neal, and then number 6 is Brian Rust, floating up there pretty well. But Malkin, you look at what he's done now. He's hit 3 milestones in the first week of the season, similar to what we talked about with Crosby. Okay, now move on and continue to perform the way you've performed. 500 goals for Malkin, 1,300 points, and 800 assists all hit within the first week of the season. He also, just a feather in the cap, leads the league in scoring with 11 points in 5 games, the best start to a season he has had in his career. Perfect to wait till year 19 to go out and do that. But 2 goals, 9 assists in 5 games. If you look at his stat line, the last 4, 2 assists, a goal and 2 assists, and then a goal and 3 assists for a 4-point night last night. Evgeni Malkin has been on fire this season.
It's been an incredible start to the year. He's leading the league in points right now. It's only been those 2 goals, but I mean, they were 2 important goals for himself to get, and for what it's worth, his playmaking ability is clearly there as well. It's all coming together. It's all, no one expected to start from like this from him, right?
I don't think anybody could have predicted 11 points in 5 games, and if you did, you're lying.
Yeah, especially when you look at some of the superstars in the league right now that are off to slow starts. I mean, I don't think McDavid has scored a goal yet. Draisaitl just recently got his second. Austin Matthews, I don't think, has a point yet. could be wrong about that one now. But some of the biggest names in the league have struggled out of the gate, and yet there's part of the old guard in Evgeni Malkin doing this, putting up 11 points in the first 5 games, over 2 points a game, and there's your math. There's your math for you, but no one would have expected this coming from him, especially after, he's been healthy the last 2 years, but the way injuries have piled up in recent memory, the way the point to production has kind of slipped a bit, especially in certain areas. But this is the first time he's had a hot start in a long time, and it's impressive to see.
It was funny you mentioned part of that old guard. I was thinking, well, he probably is the old guard. I was wondering how many older players there are than him in the NHL right now. And there is 5. He is the 6th oldest player in the NHL right now. First, and the oldest, is Marc-Andre Fleury. And then it's Ryan Suter, Brent Burns, Corey Perry, and Alex Ovechkin. It's kind of crazy that Brent Burns is older than Corey Perry in my eyes. But again, that's a conversation for either off the podcast or an entirely different, like, after hours podcast where we have more time to kill. But that is all the ice cream, the cherry on top from last night. Those are the sweets. That's the dessert. Let's get into the vegetables. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I mean, the unfortunate side of this is they won, but there was a lot of bad. We talked about it in the outset here. Good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're never just going to give you all the good. We gotta mention the bad whenever we see it. And it was very bad and has been very bad for the Pittsburgh Penguins on the defensive side of the ice. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Pittsburgh last night. The defense continues to be a massive issue. Does the goaltending as well? Yes. But let's not leave the defense out of this and make sure that they don't come out unscathed. You look at what they've been so far in the season. And again, it's early, but it's not a good trend. Let's just put it that way. 31st in the NHL in goals allowed with 21. They're allowing 4.2 goals per game. 32nd in shots allowed. They're allowing 33 on average per game. 32nd, which is last, again, let's just remind everybody, in high danger scoring chances allowed with 14 high danger chances allowed per game. And they're tied for 30th in scoring chances in general allowed, 31. Think about that. Allowing 31 scoring chances per game is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, last night alone, Joel Blomqvist had to be at a Vezina caliber level in his 3rd career start just to allow them to stay in a game against the Buffalo Sabres. I don't want to disrespect the Buffalo Sabres, but it's not like you're taking on the Edmonton Oilers. It's not like you're taking on, well, typical Edmonton Oilers, not this early in the season Edmonton Oilers. It's not like you're taking on Nathan McKinnon. It's not like you're taking on the 2022 Boston Bruins that broke the NHL regular season record. This is a Buffalo Sabres team that has talent, but should not be doing what they were doing to the Penguins defense last night. Credit to Blomqvist because he did play at a Vezina caliber level for much of that game, but the Penguins defense just can't be that bad, Horwat.
No, and you're right. The Buffalo Sabres have talent. They are taking steps in the right direction, and I keep thinking they could be a sleeper to make the playoffs this year, but they did also start 0-2 in Prague. It's a shame Bob Dylan didn't go see that, but also it's still the Buffalo Sabres. I think they still have that younger brother mentality that they're going to work through this year, and it's still such a young team. They're the youngest team in the NHL, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. The Penguins have a veteran defense, are the 2nd oldest, by the way, or 3rd. I forget if it's actually moved up.
3rd, baby. We're 3rd, and we're under the age of 30 overall.
Yep. That's what it was.
Moving in the right direction. Shout out Dubas.
Absolutely. But it's that sort of, the veteran play should be able to, at bare minimum, if the quickness and the speed of the Sabres beats you, all right, that'll happen. But you should at least be able to position yourself much better and look like you are at least forcing hard opportunities for the Buffalo Sabres. And they just weren't. The defense was allowing, it's been looking like a revolving door. Mm-hmm. It's been a revolving door back there. Guys just flying, and you mentioned 32nd in scoring opportunities. I mean, you have to remember, not only is it you either have a struggling goalie in Tristan Jarry behind you or a rookie in Joel Blomqvist. Pick your poison, because
give me the rookie, by the way. We'll talk about Jarry in a little bit, but give me the rookie.
Yeah, and at this point, you want the rookie in there, which again, not good, but it's you have to stand tall in front of your goalie because it's either someone struggling or an inexperienced face,
Mm-hmm.
and neither of those are fun for fans to see in net because it's like back in the day when every shot would get taken against Marc-Andre Fleury in the playoffs, you kind of shook a little bit. You didn't know what was going to happen. It's
Yeah.
kind of the sense that you're getting now. It's with Jarry or a youngster. Neither of them really, Jarry obviously should be better. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't expect Joel Blomqvist to be as good as he is right now.
I
So
mean,
you need
he's been phenomenal.
yeah. So you need your defense to kind of mitigate those scoring chances, mitigate those shots against, get a couple of blocks, get a couple of steals, and just not look like that revolving door.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this. This goes especially for two players that you know who I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Letang and Karlsson. It's not defensive ability for a lot of those chances, especially last night. It's mental errors.
Yeah.
You guys are in year 19 and whatever Karlsson's in. I think it's like 15 or 16.
Something like that.
But over a decade plus, pushing 2 decades in the league, you cannot continue to make these mental errors every single shift. It's not even that it's once a game. You have that, it's the Karlsson gaff. Oh, well, I mean, hopefully it doesn't burn them this time. No, it is very frequent for both of those players to start this season. They need to lead this defense. You're never going to get shut down defense guys, or defensive performances from those two guys. But you can't look like you're out to lunch. And a lot of the times, both of those players have looked like they're out to lunch so far this season. Last night, especially for Erik Karlsson, I mean, a lot of turnovers on mental errors. And sometimes it just seemed like the urgency wasn't there. And I understand Erik Karlsson skates. It's easier for him to skate than anybody else in the league. He's one of the best skaters in the league. So it doesn't always have to look like he is killing himself to get back into the play. But whenever that's the case and you're getting outskated to the puck, it's not a good look. So it's the mental errors. It's the sense of urgency on the blue line. I think they have to be a lot more careful with the puck coming out. And I understand you take the good with the bad. The Penguins have been one of the better offensive teams in the NHL to start this season, but you can't continue to win and you can't continue to kind of stay afloat if you're giving up these many chances and if you're leaving your goaltender out to dry on these many chances and you don't have a guy that is a bona fide show that he can do it for 50 games a season stud right now in net. You have a Blomqvist who, as you mentioned, might get there, might be well on his way there. But again, how much do you really want to test a guy making his third career, not even start, his third career appearance? He came in relief, and a Tristan Jarry who, listen, we're going to get to, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, is Jarry bad because of the defense, or is Jarry supposed to make those saves regardless of the defense? At the end of the day, I feel like with Tristan Jarry, and there's a reason everybody says, well, it feels like the team plays better or plays harder in front of Nedeljkovic. It feels like they play harder in front of Joel Blomqvist. Well, that's because Tristan Jarry is supposed to be the guy that if they make that mistake, he should cover it up. He hasn't been. And maybe you grip the stick a little bit tighter, knowing, all right, well, if we make any mistake, if we let any opportunity go back on Jarry, he's going to let it past him right now. So maybe they're gripping the stick too tight with Jarry. Maybe they're just trusting Jarry a little bit too much, the players out there. But I think when you look at this, I mean, the defense just has to be better across the board. No matter who is between the pipes, you just have to be better. Now, again, what changes can the Penguins make to mitigate these chances, as you said? Nothing in the personnel, right? The personnel is not going to change. There's not going to be some player that comes up from the minors and all of a sudden all that ails them is cured. They have proven in the past that they can be better than this. They need to buckle down and be better than this at the end of the day.
Oh, without a doubt. It's so tough watching just, watching this happen. It is because the Hall of Fame defenders back there and Letang and Karlsson, and those two are going to have their gaps because of the style of game that they play. But you also expect Letang at least to have a bit more of a sense of, I don't want to say urgency, but urgency and just hockey smarts. Get that his express and show his hockey IQ. You can't leave your goalies out to dry that much. You just can't. I get that you expect Jarry to be the guy that makes those saves, to make those plays himself and make up for those gaps that happen in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when he's not doing that, you have to button down yourself.
Yeah.
It's going to be a struggle. It's still a learning curve. You can't give them too much more leeway, though. It's the preseason's gone by, and the beginning of the season is now not in the rearview. You're still kind of in the midst of it, and you're still learning what Quinn is bringing to the table. But at the same time, power play seems to have found itself pretty easily under him. Now the defense kind of has to. They're getting to the end of that learning curve. I'd say you give them another game, and if it's not squared away by the next time we talk, then there's issues.
I mean, for how bad it's been, I'm going to assume it's going to take more than a game to cure these issues. But at the same time, I mean, you have a winning record despite all of this. We talked last episode or 2 episodes ago about, hey, is the bottom 6 scoring sustainable? And I think that when you watch it, it seems like it could be sustainable based on what you're seeing. Having a winning record while playing this poor of defense is not sustainable at all. I mean, point blank, end of discussion. It's not sustainable, so they need to buckle down. And if they don't, I mean, it's going to be another rough season. It'll be entertaining, like you mentioned. It's always entertaining. But a lot of those times and a lot of the teams you're going to play are not going to let you back into the game like the Buffalo Sabres did last night. Let's close off this episode with a little word association, something we haven't done, but I wanted to talk about some players, but they haven't really required us to talk about them for a full segment. So I threw about a half dozen in here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say a name, and then both of us are going to give one word or phrase that comes to mind when thinking of these players. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comment section. What is that word or phrase that came up to you whenever we mentioned these names? And let's start with one that had some headlines yesterday. Rutger McGroarty. What is one word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear the name Rutger McGroarty?
A positive work in progress. I know that's a bit lengthy, but I wanted to say work in progress, but sometimes work in progress feels like it's a negative connotation. No, he's a positive work in progress because really he should have started in the AHL anyway. Injuries just kind of piled up, and the opportunity arose for him because he looks to be a budding NHLer and is just on his way there. This is a good spot for him. He'll be fine. No one should have been surprised by the move, by the way. I don't know if anyone was. But Kyle Dubas pretty much blatantly said they want him playing. And then he got healthy, scratched a game. Again, missing a game is fine. But you don't want him sitting in the press box for weeks on end, days on end. You miss a game here or there, maybe to get that sort of experience under your belt, but then you got to be playing. So it was a smart move, and it's a positive work in progress.
Yeah, I have a similar word for that, and it's promising. I mean, I liked what I saw in his first stint. I understand that he didn't light the world on fire. I understand that he didn't even collect his first NHL point, but he just needs to round out the edges a little bit, and he's going to get a better opportunity to do so at the American Hockey League level. He's going to get more ice time. He's going to get power play 1 opportunities down there. He's going to get opportunities to play on a top forward line. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do when he goes back down to the AHL. And again, I think it's promising. I think this is a guy that you're going to see by the end of the season back in the black and gold in southwestern Pennsylvania instead of northeastern Pennsylvania. Let's go over to the number 2 player that I have on this list, Ryan Graves. One word or phrase to describe Ryan Graves so far.
I just have meh. Meh. I mean, hasn't been totally awful yet, but is also a +2. So there's some things going on there, some things cooking. I'm not going to say the turnaround is there, but he hasn't seemed overly egregious every game so far. Is it, again, for a defenseman in his position, it might be ideal to kind of be invisible for a couple of games. That's what he has been. So let's see if that can continue. Let's see if he can make plays that make you go, oh, look, there he is doing good things. I saw one of those against the Maple Leafs, but other than that, it's just been meh so far. I know there's been some gaffes, but otherwise better than last season.
Yeah, I mean, last night was the most mistakes I've seen him made, but a lot of them were in the offensive zone, and he was able to get back to kind of avoid it being a disaster in the defensive zone. So as far as Ryan Graves, first and foremost, is meh a word? I mean, I'm not going to take it from you, but like
it's a phrase.
I'm curious, is that like Webster's dictionary? Do they have meh? Like the AP style book, do they have meh? I gotta check that out. But I'll say
if they don't, I'm sure they will soon because it's that popular of a phrase. I just didn't want to use the word mid either, by the way. That's
I appreciate that. I do appreciate that because I do not like that word. But I'll say better. Better is the word I'm going with. Low bar, I know, based on what we saw last year, but for the most part, he's been fine. I mean, not up to his contract standards, and I don't think that's something that we should judge him against at the beginning of this season, because I think it's a long road to climb to kind of reach the potential of what that contract lays expectation-wise on him, but he's been better. I mean, the game against Montreal, rough because I don't think him and Ryan Shea particularly work well together. I think getting Jack St. Ivany back in there with him sets him up for success, like we've been saying all summer long. And I think because of that pairing, because of that deployment, and I think you also have to give a little bit of credit to David Quinn as well, because, I mean, it seems like the floor has risen for Ryan Graves. And at the end of the day, even that minimal upgrade is big for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I'll say better for Ryan Graves. Let's go to Michael Bunting. A lot of discussion starting to pick up around Michael Bunting. I'm going to go first on this one.
Mm-hmm.
The word that comes to mind with Michael Bunting is quiet. And that is not a word that I think I would have ever used to describe Michael Bunting. You saw a little bit of that pest-like attitude last night. He was getting under the skin of some people on the Buffalo Sabres, namely Jason Zucker. But the connection just doesn't seem like it's there right now with his line mates. And it just doesn't seem like he's making an impact on games in the ways that he did last season. And that's not even scoring. It's just last year you could feel his presence. You could see his presence. This year, a lot of times, kind of just fades into the back, and the Penguins need a lot more from him in a top six that is desperately searching for players to step up to that next level.
I like it. I have a phrase. I have Taps Mike, is this thing on? So
yes, that's a good phrase.
Quiet, and that fits perfectly. In 5 games, just 1 assist. And not exactly at all what was expected from a guy who came in like a house of fire after the trade deadline. Maybe the microphone will turn on soon. It's going to need to, but yeah, it's been a slow start for him.
Yeah, I mean, when I say the Penguins are desperately searching for people to step up in the top 6, obviously not including the centers, but Rickard Rakell has. I mean, Rickard Rakell goals in 3 straight games, including the biggest goal last night. Maybe not the biggest goal. We have Malkin's 500th that he scored from his butt. We have Crosby scoring his first of the season in overtime. But, I mean, Rickard Rakell, 40 seconds left, goes to the dirty areas, puts away the puck in the back of the net. But goals in 3 straight games for him. Brian Rust gets on the score sheet. I think you're seeing him kind of pick up his play. Anthony Beauvillier has a couple of goals, even though he is starting to become a roller coaster. I mean, watching him is very interesting this season. But you can't be quiet. You cannot be quiet if you're Michael Bunting. You are paid to be loud, obnoxious, and in your face. I want to see more of that for number 8. Let's go over to Jesse Puljujärvi, capturing the imagination of Penguins Twitter and Penguins fandom. What do you think about Jesse Puljujärvi? One word or phrase or what?
I just have NHLer written down.
Yeah?
Just, this is what he should be doing. He's back. I think even a second word could just be healthy. He's back. He's stronger and more confident than ever, it appears. Looks to be fully back, and there wasn't too much doubt that he was an NHLer before. But working his way back from injury or from surgery, it just was tough to get the legs under him. Now that he's had pretty much a second off season to work through everything, and a long off season at that, he's come back. And he's looked looks stronger than ever, skating better than ever, and is ready to be a regular NHLer. It should not be taken out of this lineup until ever.
Well, yeah, pretty much. No, pretty much. I 100% agree with you. I think it was one of my takeaways from the Montreal game, as I said, Jesse Puljujärvi should not be taken out of this lineup for the foreseeable future, which means until something drastic happens, he is in your lineup, because right now he's the centerpiece of the bottom 6. Right? He is the best player in your bottom 6, and it's by a large margin. And that's saying something whenever your bottom 6 is playing well. Cody Glass has been good. Noah Jarry was absolutely deking in a phone booth yesterday. Crazy. I know. Kevin Hayes has looked solid. Drew O'Connor scored a major goal last night as well. Lars Eller has been good, but Jesse Puljujärvi, and that leads to what my word is. I mean, I've been watching Outer Banks a lot because it is Outer Banks season. Thank you very much. So the word that I'm using for Jesse Puljujärvi, treasure, found gold, any of that works. I mean, a guy that was a free agent because of his surgery, Kyle Dubas took a chance on him, and right now it's looking like it's paid off tenfold. I mean, he has been excellent all season long, including the preseason. I mean, let's not forget, he diced up that Buffalo Sabres team in the preseason opener for a hat trick. And now you look at what he did last night, his first goal of the year, an absolute beauty of a goal for Jesse Puljujärvi. He is a treasure for the Pittsburgh Penguins, both on the ice and, you know what, I'll say off the ice. This is a guy that, and I said it last night, a lot of people are rooting for. I mean, not just, you know, his fellow countrymen and all the listeners that we have from Finland, but Edmonton's fan base rooting for him. Carolina's fan base rooting for him. Fan bases that he has never played for. You can see that people are like, that's good for Puljujärvi. So good for Puljujärvi. He's a happy guy. He's a smiley guy. He's the Bison King, and he is the Pittsburgh Penguins treasure through 1 week of the season.
That's a great way of all putting it. That's perfect. And it's just a good story that everyone can kind of keep up with this year after just all of that time off, all of working his way back. And, you know, now he's here and he's going to be here to stay.
We got two more. Let's go with his line mate, Lars Eller. What do you think about Lars Eller in the first week of the season?
I want to say unexpected, just sort of more than I think I would have given him, you know, through 5 games, 2 goals, 2 important goals in 1 game. And an extra assist, just unexpected, especially considering he's one of the sneaky old guys on this team. You don't normally think of him as one of the elder statesmen, but he's 35. So seeing this sort of start is great stuff from him, and it's just unexpected in my eyes. I'm sure there will be plenty that disagree, but that's just sort of where I stood with it.
Yeah, he's definitely turning back the clock a little bit here to start the season. And with that, this is going to be a very quick and simple one. Perfect. You don't get much better when it comes to third line center production. Defensive side of the puck, penalty kill, offensive side of the puck. He's been perfect so far. Can't ask for much more from Lars Eller. So I'll leave it at that. Now let's close it out with this one. And well, we said that this is going to be a topic of conversation all season. I didn't expect it to be a topic of conversation every time we stepped behind a microphone, but Tristan Jarry, one word or phrase, Horwat, for Tristan Jarry. Before you say that, shout out to Bob Grove. Jarry has been pulled in 4 of his last 10 starts.
Oh, you know what that is? That is unplayable.
Yeah.
And that's my word.
Yeah.
And do we need to go too much further into detail? I've said it, I think, to you a couple of times now. If Nedeljkovic comes back and has even a halfway decent start, he doesn't have to win. Just a halfway decent, hey, you know what, you looked healthy. It's his net. And there's no other way of putting it. I don't know what has happened to Jarry. I don't know what. I don't know where to go with this. I think everyone saw that he had promise when he was first given that starting job a couple years back. I think a lot of people were ready to give him some slack after the Islanders series because it was his first playoff run, and a lot of the team didn't help him out either. And then he was hurt for the Rangers run, and the Penguins almost won that damn series anyway.
Yeah, and he was good in Game 7 on a broken ankle.
Yeah. So, again, ready and willing to give him a little bit of slack, and then the wheels have since fallen off. He can't stay healthy, and now it might be I'm not going to make the assumption or make accusatory statements. Now it might be a mental thing because he's just lost. He looks lost in the net. Again, the defense isn't playing good in front of him. He's supposed to be the one that makes those stops when gas happen in front of him.
Yeah.
At this point of the season, I don't think anybody expected Joel Blomqvist to have more ice time than Tristan Jarry.
Yeah.
It's by about 30 or so minutes, but that's half of a game.
And think about where we would be if Nedeljkovic was healthy. How much would Jarry have actually played to this point if Alex Nedeljkovic started the season healthy? So it's crazy. And it's a point where, you know, Hunter Hodes always says it. You know when Tristan Jarry is going to play well is when he's confident. And you can tell because he's out on his angles. He's out of the net. He's at the top of the crease. I mean, last night, he looked like a turtle. Only his head was sticking out of the crease, really, because he has, it seemingly, no confidence. Again, we don't know because we're not in the room, but on the outside looking in, that's what it appears to be, and that is no bueno for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And somebody asked me yesterday, shout out the Ohio Pens fan, Ohio Pens fan 66. Let's make sure we get it right. So exactly how bad is a Jarry buyout? So I looked at it, and according to Puckpedia, first and foremost, you can't buy out a player midseason. So whenever that buyout happens, 6 years after this year that you have it on your salary cap, 1.75 next year, 5.05 the following season, 4.5 the following season, and then 3 consecutive years where he would count $797,000 against the salary cap. So 6 years of eating contract, including 2 years where you'd be eating a $4+ million contract for Tristan Jarry. That's not an option that Kyle Dubas is gonna touch upon. Nope. I don't know what his options are at this point. It doesn't seem like anybody's picking up the phone when it comes to trade conversations. We saw Ville Husso get put on waivers. I don't know if that's a great option either. I mean, Jesse Marshall said it last night when somebody asked, what do you do? And Jesse said, put him on the bench until somebody else wants him to play hockey for him, because it's really all you can do. You're kind of locked into a bad situation with him. But, you know, through all of this, I haven't even given my word or phrase, train wreck. Tristan the train wreck Jarry. Like that is where we're at right now with the Penguins goaltender. And if you look at his kind of graph via NHL, if you're tuned in on YouTube, I'm pulling it up right now for you. He's below the 50th percentile in everything. And they don't even count it at that point. They just try to like save face for goaltenders and say, we're just going to say it's below 50th because it could be very, very bad. You look at what he is right now, and outside of mid-range save percentage, which he is in the 75th percentile, he has just absolutely been horrendous through the start of the season. I mean, you look at 6 goals given up in the opener. Last night, he gave up 2 goals on the first 2 shots and then 3 in his first 5 and gets pulled. And even on Monday, you know, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was saying, listen, he got strong towards the end. He looked bad at the beginning, but outside of maybe one period this year, he has just been an absolute train wreck.
Yep. The only I've got some goalie stats in front of me too here. I mean, he's given up 12 on the season. He's at 5.47 goals against average. The only goalie with a higher GAA that has played more than one game in the NHL is Alexander Georgiev, but also the Avalanche are, oh boy, what's going on there bad.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the Penguins defense. Pens in Colorado, their defenses figure it out because that is not NHL level at all.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, actually, the Avalanche don't look totally awful. They're just 0-4 to start, and it's a lot, and a lot of it, if not all of it, has been on Georgiev, who's given up 17 in 4 games.
Yeah.
That's tough, but it's the only goalie that's been worse than Jarry this year so far. Ville Husso's numbers are bad, but he played 1 game, was put on waivers. Yeah. So that was a quick plug pull. Whereas Georgiev and Jarry have been, I mean, Georgiev started every game for Colorado. I don't know how much longer that's going to last.
Yeah.
Jarry has been given 3 starts and has been pulled from one of them. Probably would have been pulled from 2 had there not been a game the next night.
Yeah.
So and you said 4 in the last 10, thanks to Bob Grove. This is just brutal.
Train wreck.
Yeah.
Unprofessional is what Josh Yohe put on Twitter yesterday. An unprofessional performance from Jarry.
He has 60 saves on the season.
Yeah. I mean, you could also, this might be a touch too far, but Bush League also comes to mind when looking at what Jarry's been able to do over the past week. So listen, it's a long season and it's early and it feels like we're burying him, but also this is not the first time. This is the first time it has looked this bad.
Yeah.
It has never gotten to this point, but for a goaltender that knew the microscope was on him, for a goaltender that is coming into this season, and it's kind of a make or break, despite the fact that he's kind of protected a little bit by that contract. He certainly doesn't look like he should be an NHL goaltender or an NHL starting goaltender anytime soon. But I guess you could also go with the NHL goaltender moniker. But we're going to stop burying Jarry, at least for this week. We'll be back at it again next week with that, and also talking the rest of Penguins hockey. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts from. We'll see you guys next time.